I had what seemed like the perfect family, until I uncovered a devastating secret. My wife Emily and I have been married for 8.5 years, and we have 2 children. Our love story began in high school, heating up swiftly until I found out she was pregnant, and we got married in a hurry. I always believed we were meant to be, until I discovered her infidelity on a recording made in our bed. The man, Daniel, is not only her lover but also the biological father of our children. My life, my world, crumbled at that moment. But the story doesn't end there. I decided to expose it all, even if it means I have to re-examine all my trust and love. Welcome to the Butterfly Tumblr Radio channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. My name is Jack and I've been married to my wife, Emily, for 8.1 years. We have 2 children, an 8-year-old boy named Daniel and a 4-year-old girl named Olivia. Emily was already pregnant when we married and Daniel was born 6 months later. The majority of our friends and family made no fuss about our quick marriage, but Emily's parents were a different story. They were furious and made certain to blame me for everything. They claimed I had ruined Emily's future by getting her pregnant. I was never the man they desired for their daughter, and never will be. They believed she had settled for me, which hurt deeply. I can't deny that I convinced Emily to join me. I was her first, and that is the truth. But I adore Emily more than anyone else ever could. Her parents will never see that. However, they can't get over her becoming pregnant before marriage. No matter what I do, they will always see me as the villain. Emily and I met as high school seniors in Chicago Heights, and I was in my 2nd year at the University of Illinois in Champaign. The moment I saw her, I knew she was the one for me. We quickly became a couple and felt like an ideal match. We became intimate around a month into our relationship and were inseparable. After that, Emily returned to live with her parents after graduating from high school and began working as a teller at Chase Manhattan Bank. I saw her every weekend, whether in Chicago Heights or Oakland, where my parents lived. When I found out she was 2 months pregnant with a year left in college, we immediately planned a wedding. We got married in November and Daniel was born 6 months later, in May. I finished my degree just 2 weeks after Daniel was born and got a job in airport security at O'Hare Airport. Emily stayed with her parents until I graduated and got a job. We moved into our apartment immediately following my graduation and began our life together as a family for the next 8 years. Life was blissful. We got better jobs, purchased a new home, watched Daniel grow up and welcomed Olivia into our lives. We were pleased and content with the promotions and increased income, which made life even better. But all of this happiness was about to change. For months, Emily and I argued over who was preventing the other from getting enough sleep. I insisted that her snoring woke me up, and she said the same about me. She refused to admit that she snored, but she had this annoying squeaky little snore that never failed to wake me up once I was awake. I had to endure the squeaking for an hour before I could fall back asleep. I know I probably snore too, as I've caught myself doing it on occasion, but it felt like she was solely blaming me, which I didn't think was fair. I had already received enough blame from her parents and did not need it from her to resolve the situation. I brought home a voice-activated recorder from work and placed it on the nightstand beside our bed. I joked with Emily that we'd find out who was snoring. The next morning, after a nice kiss, we rewinded the tape and listened. My snoring sounded like a chainsaw and Emily couldn't help but mock me about it. But then we noticed her snoring to a squeaky sound in the gaps between my snores. Emily gasped and gave me a surprised look which turned into laughter. She exclaimed, "Oh, my goodness, I am terrible." We laughed together and she said, "Honey, we both need to work on this, so we don't kick each other out of the bedroom." I agreed, relieved to know I wasn't the only one at fault. She smacked my arm lightly and apologized. "I apologize for blaming you entirely. We are both guilty." We exchanged warm kisses and hugs, followed by some intimate moments by the time we finished. The kids had woken up and we were running late for work. A few days later, Emily asked me to come home early to watch the kids because she needed to attend a bank meeting. I noticed the recorder and couldn't resist using it to hear her snore, but instead I discovered something shocking. The tape captured us making love. However, what followed was devastating. Emily had been unfaithful in our bed and brought another man into our home. I immediately called our neighbor, Nancy, and asked her to watch the kids, because I had a big work project. Nancy agreed, so I took the kids to her house, telling them to behave and that I'd be back by dinner. They were delighted to spend time with Nancy and her children, who were approximately the same age. I returned to the bedroom and played the recording again. "Oh, Daniel, it's been too long since we've been together. I have missed you." Emily's voice said, "No, not worry. Darling, I will make you happy this afternoon. I hope you become pregnant today. Jack and I want another child, and I want my children to have the same father." Daniel responded, "Doesn't Jack suspect us? Doesn't he wonder why the kids don't resemble him? Is he stupid? Do not talk about Jack in that way. He is not stupid. I've never given him reason to doubt me," Emily explained. Daniel laughed. "I'm still not sure how you fool him. Luckily, Daniel Jr. and Olivia resemble me, so he has no reason to be suspicious. Maybe today I'll give you a child who resembles me and reveals your secret. Then he will divorce you and you can marry me." Daniel recommended, "Stop it. Daniel, I care about Jack and do not want to hurt him. What we have now is just for fun, and it will always be that." Emily replied that the remainder of the recording was too painful to describe, filled with the sounds of their betrayal. I listened to the entire tape, feeling my world crumble around me. Discovering that my entire marriage had been a lie was devastating. The love, trust, and closeness shared were non-existent. How could Emily truly love me if she betrayed me like this? She could not. Hearing everything on the tape was like a dagger to my heart. I was deeply wounded and physically ill. My heart was racing as I prayed it wouldn't give out. I felt repulsed, emasculated, terrified, and furious. There are too many emotions to express, but devastated best describes them. I was no fool. I knew I needed to plan my next steps carefully. What would happen to me, my family, or my life? First, I realized I needed a copy of the tape for evidence. I was certain it would be necessary in some way. The recorder had a dual tape system, so I programmed it to duplicate from tape 1 to tape 2 and created my copy. I put that copy in a plain envelope and kept it in the trunk of my car. Whatever happened next, I had that tape as proof. Second, I needed to keep my discovery a secret until I had a solid plan. I rewound the tape to the end of our snoring segment and then deleted the rest. Then returned the recorder to the nightstand and exited the bedroom. If Emily thought about it, she might wonder if the tape recorded her and Daniel. However, she would not notice anything unusual and would not suspect that I knew her secret. I needed all of the facts before deciding on my next move. I remembered when Emily and I first met. We met through a mutual friend who was dating my cousin. I figured our high school yearbooks would be useful, so I went to the basement and searched through the boxes until I found the yearbooks. I placed both of our yearbooks in my car's trunk, leaving everything else as it was to avoid suspicion. If she noticed they were missing, I could always explain that mixed up with other items. Finally, I knew that seeing Emily that night would reveal my turmoil, so I asked my boss, Jack, for help. Jack and I had become good friends over time, and I trusted him. I told him about what I discovered and asked for a few days off to sort things out. I requested that he write a cover story about me attending an urgent anti-terrorism training in New York. Given my job, it was a reasonable excuse that would not raise suspicions. Of course, I had no intention of actually attending. I had different plans. Jack agreed to assist explaining the sudden braining session and that I needed to board a plane within an hour. I called Emily and explained the urgent trip Jack had planned. I told her I'd drop the kids off at NY's for her to watch and was on my way to the airport. I promised to update her once I had more information. Naturally, she was upset by my sudden departure, but I insisted there was nothing I could do and said goodbye. I heard her say I love you, Jack. As I hung up, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I went over to NY's and explained that I needed to take an unexpected trip out of town. I told her Emily would pick up the kids in about an hour and she agreed. I asked if I could bring Daniel and Olivia home with me to pack and say goodbye. She agreed. So we went back to my place. Before leaving, I needed to collect DNA samples from the children with Q-tip swabs. I collected saliva samples from both Daniel and Olivia. I intend to have their DNA analyzed and compared to mine to ensure I am not their biological father, as Emily's confession on the tape indicated. After packing enough clothes for a few days, I returned the kids to NY's and thanked her for watching them. On short notice, I then drove to a hotel in Harvey, a Chicago South Side suburb. It was far enough from Chicago Heights to avoid encountering my family, but close enough to serve as a base for my investigation. After checking in, I grabbed some beer and drank heavily. It seemed to be the only way to relieve the pain. Why stay awake, reliving the pain when I could drink it away? The next morning I awoke feeling terrible. It was past 11 a.m. I wasn't sure I'd make it to noon. My head throbbed and my stomach turned, so I did the only sensible thing. I drank a couple more beers. Oddly, it helped. The next time I awoke, it was 3 p.m. and I felt slightly better. I ordered coffee and toast from room service. While waiting, I showered and changed into clean clothes. The coffee was delicious and I was able to keep the toast down. What was I going to do for the rest of the day? I checked my cell phone for messages and discovered 3. The first came from Emily. I was upset that I had not called her when I arrived in New York. She couldn't reach me because she didn't know where I was staying and asked me to call her as soon as possible. The second message, also from Emily, arrived earlier this morning. She was furious now, having not heard from me the previous night or this morning. Her irritation was palpable. I didn't care. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. When I finally spoke with her, I intended to give her a big excuse. I knew I needed to call her soon, but I'd wait a little longer. After all, she was already angry. How much angrier could she get? I laughed at the absurdity of the situation. Jack made the third call just a few minutes after Emily. He claimed she demanded to know my location and what was going on. He told me that I owed him a lot of money for dealing with her and I agreed. He told her that he had no more information than she did because he didn't know my hotel. He also mentioned that the seminar would be held at a conference center at the airport and suggested she tried to contact me there. However, we were both aware of the bureaucracy surrounding airport security. Even if I were present, she would struggle to find me, and because I wasn't there, it was even more impossible. So I felt safe until I decided to contact her. I had a few hours to work on my project. Before Emily returned from work, I sat down with my laptop and began reviewing my checklist, noting what I already knew and identifying the gaps that needed to be filled. I flipped through her yearbook and made a list of everyone who had written in her junior or senior yearbooks, categorizing them by class and year. I also called her high school and asked about a reunion book for her upcoming 5-year reunion. The administrative assistant was very helpful and offered to send me a copy of the upcoming 10 reunion book. I inquired whether it was available electronically and provided my mail address. 5 minutes later, the list was in my inbox and I started matching names from the yearbook with their current information, married names, spouses' addresses, and phone numbers. It was a treasure trove of information. I even obtained information such as the names of children, pets, hobbies, favorite foods and more, to all of Emily's classmates. I also discovered that Emily had submitted our current information, including our two children, with the note, "Hopefully number 3 will be on the way soon." I knew Emily would be home soon, so I braced myself for the impending confrontation and made the dreaded phone call. All her rage was understandable, but it didn't bother me much anymore. I was done caring about her emotions. "Jack, where the hell have you been? Why didn't you call me back last night or this morning? What the hell is going on?" she ranted. I let her vent, knowing it was best if she got everything out. I explained that I arrived very late and did not want to call and risk waking the kids. I ended up feeling sorry for myself and getting pretty drunk by the time I awoke. It was too late to make a call this morning. I had to rush to prepare everything for the next few days. I stayed at the Hilton Gardens Hotel at JFK Airport last night, but I could only get a one-night room. I need to find a new hotel for the next few nights. Keep calling my cell phone. It's the best way to contact me, but I won't be using it during my classes. My plan was to create a significant window of unreachability. I knew I needed to make anonymous calls while in town, so I went to a nearby pharmacy and got a disposable cell phone. It was perfect, inexpensive, and unraceable. When I hung up the phone, it was almost 6 p.m. Surprisingly, I felt great and was getting hungry. I saw George Rip House on my way back to the hotel and decided to stop for a bite. Once back at the hotel, it was time to gather additional information. I went through Emily's senior yearbook page by page, person by person, making a list of everyone who left comments. I typed in the comments and created a code system to categorize them. I used Immersive. For each individual friend was the code for people who appeared to be friends. If the person was a girl from Emily's close circle, I used the term girlfriend. For those who had dated or made more intimate comments, I used boyfriend. Comments were labeled as non-friend. When I was finished, I had a list of about 40 names with approximately 30 females and 10 males. I organized the list by gender code first, followed by other male codes. I found 5 boyfriends, for friends and 1 non-friend. Among the boyfriends was Daniel Michael, who I suspected was my main suspect, but I needed to be certain before drawing any conclusions. I was determined to discover the truth. The non-friend, a man named Mark Hughes, appeared to be a promising source of information, possibly because of an unpleasant history with Emily or a dislike for Daniel. In the female category, I had 3 girlfriends, approximately 25 friends and 2 non-friends. All 3 girlfriends had been bridesmaids in our wedding, so I knew I had to be cautious around them. I figured a couple of the friends might have some useful information, so I decided to focus on the non-friend. When people don't like someone, they tend to spill more information, which I expected. I compared my list to the reunion booklet, which included married names, addresses, phone numbers, spouse names, children's names, hobbies, and so on. I even included occupations and places of employment that I could find. Not everyone provided the same information, but there was plenty of data to work with. The more information I had, the better my chances of discovering the full story about Emily and her lover. It was just after 10 p.m. when I finished compiling this information. I had enough for the day. I intend to begin my investigation early the next morning and hope to complete it by the end of the day. I decided to call it night and get some rest. As I was lowering the bed covers, my cell phone rang. Looking at the clock, I realized it was only 10:30 p.m. The kids had already fallen asleep and Emily had probably finished watching the evening news and was about to go to bed. I picked up the phone wondering what she wanted to discuss. "Hello, Jack and Thay. I was hoping you'd call me tonight after you got settled." She said, "Well, I considered it. But the last time I called you I got quite an earful, so I decided to wait and see if you wanted to talk to me." I replied, I apologize for getting snippy with you. Earlier she apologized. I explained that I was just upset because I couldn't reach you. This entire trip of yours appears strange, and I suppose I was feeling a little insecure. Will you forgive me? That doesn't exactly sound like forgiveness. Honey, she responded. I responded, well, given how you've treated me, I might be a little irritated. She remained silent for a while. Whether she suspected I knew something reflecting on our failing marriage, I couldn't tell and didn't care. I hoped she was thinking about the damage she had done, but I doubted it. After a long pause, she finally said, I suppose I'll let you go. Jack, I apologize. I love you. I'm sorry. Good night, Emily. I responded and ended the call. That night I managed to get some sleep, albeit restless. The absence of her snoring was a small relief, but it also brought back memories of happier times when her snoring made us laugh. We had a wonderful morning following that realization, a memory tarnished by her betrayal. The thought of what once had and what we might never get back broke my heart all over again. The next morning I had an early start. Armed with my disposable phone, I started calling my high school friends and introducing myself as Roger Moore from Homeland Security. I explained that I was conducting a background check on Jack Taylor, who may be joining the Chicago Anti-Terrorism Task Force. I mentioned that Mr. Taylor was married to the former Emily Peterson, and inquired whether they remembered her from high school. Throughout these conversations, I delved into Emily's high school relationships. It didn't take long to learn that Daniel Michael had been Emily's high school boyfriend. They dated for about 3 years before parting ways. A few months after graduation, I also discovered that Daniel was still living in Chicago Heights, working as a loan officer at Chase Manhattan Bank. He recently divorced and had 2 sons. Finding his entry in the reunion booklet, I noticed he was a handsome man who could easily catch a woman's eye. I could understand Mia's action to him, but it hurt that she had remained involved with him, allowing him to father our children. The reasons for her actions remained unclear. Maybe she had some answers, but I was not holding my breath. Emily's relationship with Daniel ended shortly after we met, but they continued to work together at the bank until we moved to D-Plane. They were always close together, and it was easy to see how they could reconnect, but the deeper reasons for her decisions remained a mystery. I decided I had enough information from her friends and shifted my focus to the non-friends, beginning with Sarah Collins, who tipped my cover as Roger Moore. I asked if there was anything significant in Emily Peterson's background that could affect Jack Taylor's security clearance. Sarah did not hold back. She lashed out at Emily, calling her the most unpleasant person to graduate from Chicago Heights High School. Emily, according to Sarah, stole and cheated on her boyfriends. Sarah explained that during her sophomore year she was dating Daniel Michael, when Emily took him away from her. Sarah admitted that boyfriend stealing was not illegal, but she believed it revealed Emily's true personality. As time passed and Emily married Jack, her flaws became more visible. Sarah revealed that Daniel frequently started rumors claiming Emily had resumed her relationship with him after they both began working at the bank. Daniel boasted about seeing 2 of Emily's children and even revealed that she was pregnant again. This latest rumor was painful to hear. Sarah questioned Jack Taylor's suitability for a national security position because of his unfaithful wife. I hadn't expected it to be so straightforward, nor did I anticipate how much it would hurt to learn that others knew about Emily's infidelity. While I was in the darkness, I called the other 2 non-friends for more information. The second woman, Daniel, ex-wife's sister, confirmed similar information. Her sister divorced Daniel. After hearing the rumors and confronting him, Daniel had loudly claimed to father Emily's children. I asked for her sister's phone number, which she gladly provided. I planned to use it later. The male NAF friend had been obsessed with Emily throughout high school, but she never gave him a chance. He mentioned that she claimed to love Daniel but didn't intend to marry him because he was too self-centered. Daniel allegedly tried to get close to Emily for 3 years, but she always said she would only give her virginity to her future spouse. After losing her virginity, She may consider reconnecting with Daniel for nostalgic reasons. This attitude deeply hurt the person who shared it with me. He had hoped to be her future husband, but he realized she might not be as faithful to him. It stung to learn that Emily had never intended to be faithful to me. I had gathered nearly all of the information I needed. Now I wanted to take a closer look at Daniel, so I went to the bank where he works. I didn't intend to reveal my identity. I only wanted to see him in person. He matched the photograph style. Athletic and undeniably attractive. It was a shame that he had such a bad reputation. Otherwise he could have been a great find. There are a few more calls and errands to run. Before returning home, I was confident I'd be back on a plane by nightfall. I checked into the Kamloops Suites extended stay hotel near the airport and called Emily around 8:30 p.m. I told her I'd be home around noon the next day and asked her to take the afternoon off so we could spend time together. In these circumstances, I learned to be resilient and kept what I discovered hidden. I figured she'd lied to me for years, so a few lies on my part wouldn't hurt much. I assured her that I loved her and that everything would be fine. Then, for the first time in days, I slept soundly. The next morning I went straight to the office to have a lengthy conversation with Jack. He was eager to learn what I had discovered, so I shared every detail. He handed me an overnight envelope from the DNA lab, where I had submitted the samples the day before. It cost more for overnight service, but I was relieved to receive the results quickly. I opened the envelope knowing Jack needed to see the results. He was not only my boss but also a friend, and I may need to ask for a large favor in the future. Dear Mr. Taylor, the letter stated that we had completed testing on all samples provided on Wednesday, November 15th. Jack PLE1 is a male with a full sibling to sample to. In addition, a male sample 3 is a male and a full sibling to sample a female. Jack plus wanted to have the same father but a different mother than samples 3 and 4. All 4 samples have the same father, but samples 1 to have different mothers than samples 3 and 4. Jack PLE5, which is you, Mr. Taylor, is unrelated to the other samples. There is no DNA evidence that you are the biological father of any of the 4 children represented by samples 12, 3 and 4. If you require any further assistance, please do not hesitate to contact us sincerely. David Raff Y, PhD, Accurate DNA Labs Inc. I also contacted Daniel, my ex-wife, who agreed to meet with me and me to collect saliva swabs from her 2 children. I had a sworn statement in my briefcase that confirmed her willingness to provide the DNA samples. Before I left, Jack gave me a supportive hug and expressed his sympathy for what I had discovered and was going through. He reassured me of his support and willingness to assist in any way possible. He even joked about watching out for me, given how thorough my investigation had been in such a short period of time. We shared a brief laugh, a rare moment of lightness in an otherwise somber situation, filled with taped statements from Emily's former classmates, a letter from Daniel's ex-wife, a certified letter from the DNA lab, and an aching heart. I returned home and confronted my wife. I arrived a few minutes before noon, grabbed a beer from the refrigerator and settled into the family room to wait for Emily. Shortly after 12 p.m., I heard her enter the garage. She rushed over looking for a hug and kiss, but I stepped back. Her expression was confused and concerned, but I knew things were about to get much worse. "What's happening?" she asked. Her voice was filled with unease. "Do you want some beer?" I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. "No, just tell me what's wrong," she said. Her worry grew. "Emily, I am aware of the affair," I spoke bluntly. She began to deny it, but I raised my hand to stop her. "I do not want to hear any lies. I have evidence."
There is no reason for me to believe anything you are saying right now.
"Simply sit down and listen." Her face turned pale and I saw fear in her eyes. I asked if she wanted a beer or water and she chose water. I got it for her and sat down across from her, looking her in the eyes. Emily, I understand you've been having an affair. I have ample evidence to back it up. I am not here to argue or listen to excuses. I want your actions going forward to demonstrate that you understand. I am fully aware of everything. It is in your best interest to accept this fact. If you doubt me, you are more likely to make mistakes and you will not like the consequences. Here's what will happen today. I'm leaving the house. I'll be packing everything I'll need for the next month and moving out. We'll remain legally married, but I won't be living here. She gasped and whimpered, but she didn't cry or attempt to speak. This month, you have two important tasks to complete. First, decide whether you still love me and wish to remain my wife, regardless of my decision. You have to figure it out for yourself. If you don't love me or want to be my wife, nothing else matters. Take some time to think about it and let me know after 1 month. Second, you should record every detail of your betrayal. I adore the Emily. I knew the person I married, but I'm not sure who you are now. So I need to know everything about your affairs, including who you were with when it began, how frequently it occurred, where it took place, what you did and what you said, everything. I need to know why you did it, what you got out of it and what they offered that I couldn't. I want the whole truth. Emily, don't leave anything out. If we want to save our marriage, I need to understand who you have become. Remember that I have concrete evidence. Do not try to deceive me. If you lie, it is over. If you tell me the truth, there is a chance we can save our relationship. I mentioned a chance. No promises. Don't read too much into it. Maya's eyes were filled with panic and I could tell she knew how serious the situation was. If you are unable or unwilling to tell me the truth, please let me know by the end of the month, and we will end our marriage as quickly and painlessly as possible. The ball is now in your court. You have the next month to make your decision. When you have decided on our future, send an email to my work address. Include a complete account of what happened. Both should arrive exactly 4 weeks from today. No sooner, no later. Also, if I find out you resume your affair, our marriage will end immediately. Do you understand? She nodded. Fear was evident in her eyes. Now about the children. Do you want to keep them with you for the next month? Or should I take them either way? It works for me. If you want them, I will pay them a visit every Wednesday night. I will pick them up from the babysitter, keep them until 8:30 p.m. and then bring them home. I'll call you when I arrive and you can come get them on weekends. I will take them one of the 2 days. You set the schedule and I will follow it. If you don't want the kids, I will follow the same schedule. You can get them from the babysitter on Wednesdays and I'll get them from here at 8:30 p.m. You can have them one of the weekend days and I will deliver them to you. I am going to pack my belongings now. When I'm finished, I'll leave. Decide on the kids before I leave. With that, I left the room and went upstairs to pack some bags. I could hear her sobbing downstairs as I packed, but by the time I returned she had composed herself. Her eyes were red and her makeup was smeared, but she appeared calmer. Jack, I understand you don't want to hear this. You're correct. I don't follow my own instructions. Alternatively, we can end this marriage right now. Would you like to keep the kids with you? Or should I take them? I want them with me. She said tearfully, all right. I'm leaving. I'll contact you tomorrow to schedule for picking up the kids on Wednesdays and 1 day each weekend. Goodbye, Emily, I said, walking out the door. The month passed relatively quickly. Every Wednesday night I went out to dinner with Daniel and Olivia before returning to my hotel suite. Olivia, being so young, had no idea what was going on, but Daniel had an inkling that something was wrong. He asked why I wasn't at home and I explained that his mother and I were dealing with some issues and attempting to resolve them, so it was best if I stayed away for a while. I assured him that he should be patient and not worry, emphasizing that his mother and I adored him and Olivia. Daniel seemed satisfied with my responses, so I left it at that. I saw Emily every time I drove the kids off at their house. She'd come to the front door to greet them and make sure they got in safely. She started walking toward the car to talk to me, but I simply held up my hand to stop her before driving away. I could see her face in tears as I drove away, and she remained in the doorway. It's exactly 1 month to the day since our confrontation. I got an email from Emily. Her message reads, "Dear Jack, I sincerely apologize for the pain I have caused you. I love you and want to be your wife. Please call me after reading my letter and let me know if you plan to respond. I hope to spend the rest of my life with you.
I need you and the kids need you.
Emily, I love you." As I read her email, I suspected Emily wouldn't be completely honest in her letter. I doubted she'd admit Daniel and Olivia were not my biological children. However, I needed to read the letter to be sure the email included a lengthy letter. "Dear Jack, I'm writing to express my hope that you will contact me again. I adore you and hope to continue being your wife and growing old alongside you. It's simple to say, but what I have to tell you is extremely complicated. I know it will hurt you and I didn't want that, but I am determined to be completely honest with you. I love to mend you and Daniel Michael. You mentioned that I was having an affair and, by most definitions, I believe I was. However, I did not see it this way. An affair typically begins with a brief infatuation and ends with a short-lived romantic relationship. My relationship with Daniel is different. It goes back to before my relationship with you now. When I met you, I was already involved with someone else. That person was Daniel Michael. We had been dating since my sophomore year. Daniel is a handsome, charming, witty, intelligent and caring gentleman. He still has all of those qualities. I realized I loved him soon after we started dating. He represented everything a girl could hope for in a boyfriend or husband. I adored him, Jack, but he had one major flaw that made marriage impossible. He was extremely attractive and overconfident, making it clear that he would not be faithful to me as a husband. Despite my love for him, I knew I couldn't marry him and I was determined to keep my virginity from my future husband. He tried repeatedly to persuade me otherwise, and while a part of me was tempted, I stood firm. Then I met you. I quickly realized I loved you and wanted to marry you. The problem was I couldn't stop loving Daniel. I loved you both differently and similarly. It's difficult to articulate, but that's the closest I can come to describing my emotions. Daniel continued to pursue me, despite knowing about you and my feelings for you. I once told him that after giving my virginity to my future husband, I might consider having an intimate relationship with him. Before marriage, he thought it was odd, but he didn't press the issue. Daniel noticed a difference. After we made love, he kept asking for the opportunity I had offered, even though we weren't married or even engaged, even though I knew you were the man I wanted to marry. Jack, I caved in, and I allowed Daniel, and in fact I wanted him to be intimate with me. I adored him alongside my feelings for you. I got pregnant and I was certain it was Daniel's child. Not yours, but I wanted you as my husband, not him. I can't believe I did these things to you, but I did. From that point forward, I know I betrayed your trust. I told you about our upcoming baby and you married me. You never questioned the child's paternity because you took my virginity. Little Daniel looked exactly like me, so there was no doubt I didn't stop seeing Daniel after our marriage. We continued to meet every month or so, even as our marriage progressed. I stayed involved with him. I loved you both. You were an incredible father to Daniel. Continue to be for Olivia. A woman could not ask for a better husband. Every day my love for you grew stronger, but I know this won't make things any better. My feelings for Daniel never faded either. For years, I kept a close eye on you, almost hoping for a slip-up, so that I could justify my actions, but you never did. You were everything a woman desired in a husband, and I realized I didn't deserve you. I know I'm dragging this out, but you requested the details and I'm providing them too. You asked who it was, and the answer was Daniel Michael. Why? Because I love him. Where we met in various locations. His home is here: hotels, motels, restaurants, parks, and even our vehicles. I don't recall all of the dates and times, but they were about once a month or every other month. We made love, played, talked, we kissed and hugged. He did things with me that neither you nor I ever did. I didn't always want to participate in those activities, but I let them happen because our time together was limited. Daniel eventually married, but it did not last as expected. He cheated on his wife while also having relationships with me and other women. His wife discovered this, which resulted in their divorce. He encouraged me to divorce you and marry him, but I made it clear that I would never leave you. I knew he'd cheat on me too. It's ironic that I demanded such high standards from a husband but failed to meet them as a wife. I deeply regret it. Jack, there are 2 more things you should know. Daniel is Olivia's father, and I am pregnant again. I am fairly certain it occurred the last time Daniel and I were together. This means that all 3 of our kids are biologically Daniel. I figured it would be best if they were all real siblings, leading without a doubt. However, you are and will always be their father. You have loved and cared for them. Even though Daniel has yet to meet them, he does not want to be their father. I don't want him to be either. I want you to be their father. I sincerely apologize for everything and the pain I have caused you. If I couldn't do everything, I would. I hope you'll come home. Give me a chance to work things out and save our marriage. I hope your love for me is strong enough to want that. Please get back to me. I understand that I have not answered all of your questions, but I promise to respond to any that remain. I beg you to give me a chance. I will be waiting for your call. Love me. The next day, Friday, I called and informed her that I would be returning home early the next morning. I asked her to take the day off and drop the kids off at the babysitter's because we had a lot to discuss. She agreed and asked what was on my mind. I replied that you would have to wait until tomorrow to find out, and then the call ended. Next day I entered the house. Emily was waiting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, which I gladly accepted. I suggested that we sit at the table to discuss some issues. After we settled in, I opened my briefcase and placed a large stack of paperwork and files on the table. Emily, here's my evidence. I began. It begins with an audio tape. From it, I discovered a few things. You were having an affair with someone named Daniel Michael. This affair began before we married. Neither of our 2 children are biologically mine. You had planned to become pregnant again with him, so I would be raising a 3rd child. That was not mine. You said you loved me and did not want to abandon me. For him, her face was a mask of disbelief. If you're wondering where the tape came from, it's the audio recorder we used to document our snoring. I removed everything except the snoring to prevent you from realizing you had been exposed. I didn't actually travel to New York. I went to Chicago Heights to look into your past, discover who Daniel was, and learn about my children. That's why you couldn't find me in New York. After I learned the truth about you, I did not want to see or talk with you again. I arranged the high school yearbooks on the table. I thought the best place to begin would be your yearbooks. I made a list of everyone who left comments in your yearbook and categorized them based on their apparent relationship to you. Here are the specifics of what I discovered in your yearbook. I placed my cross-reference list on top of the yearbooks and took out the reunion booklet. The school administration sent me this booklet to commemorate your upcoming class reunion. I used it to collect current names, addresses, and phone numbers for everyone on my contact list. Sarah Collins Miller and Daniel, the ex-wife's sister, all provided me with valuable information. Who was in your class? There was a guy in high school who had a long-standing crush on you and was also very helpful. He told me he stopped loving you when he discovered you planned to have a relationship with Daniel behind my back after we married. Many of your friends and acquaintances in our hometown are aware of your actions and personality. Emily, I don't understand how you could have thought Daniel would keep quiet. After all, he was also involved in it. I took out a folder containing the letter from the DNA lab. This letter confirms that I am not the father of our two children. I reached out to Daniel's ex-wife, who agreed to meet with me. She gave me permission to collect DNA samples from her two children, her son Daniel. This letter confirms that Daniel and Olivia are half-siblings to Daniel Michael's two children. Mrs. Michael's letter confirms that these samples were collected with her consent and from her and Daniel, her two sons. I took out one last folder from my briefcase and placed it on the table. Emily, this is the last evidence I have. I could probably find more if I wanted. Hotel receipts, DNA traces, personal items you've hidden, and even eyewitness testimony. But I believe what I have here is sufficient. Don't you agree? She nodded, her face pale from fear. Let us be clear, I have no interest in hearing about your affair. Your letter confirmed what I already knew, and I appreciate your honesty, albeit late. Thank you for finally being honest. Emily, I deeply loved you. I gave this marriage my all, and I assumed you did as well, but discovering the deception, this betrayal has revealed that our marriage was based on lies. When I first discovered everything, I was furious. I wanted to confront you and Daniel physically, but the anger has subsided. I do not want violence. I want a resolution. Emily's expression shifted from shock to fear. As I spoke when I discussed my initial violent impulses, she recoiled and I could see her fear. Here is the final piece, I said, opening the folder. These are divorce papers. I have already signed them. All that remains is for you to sign. There are also documents that give me full custody of our children, including the one you are carrying. Her expression shifted from fear to desperation. Despite everything, her reaction touched my heart, but I knew I couldn't accept what she had done. After you sign these documents, you will place them in my safe deposit box. Your actions will determine whether or not I file them. Agree with my terms and we will not be living as husband and wife. However, you're welcome to stay in the house. Move your belongings to the spare bedroom right away. I will use the master bedroom. Daniel will pay to zero for each child and child support deposited in trust accounts until they turn 18. This includes the new baby. The current total is 33.0. Daniel will pay 11.0. Will pay 0 and you will pay 20. Daniel must also obtain a fully paid one. 0 life insurance policy, with the children as beneficiaries and you as the policy holder. If he fails to keep his commitment, he will regain ownership of the policy. I plan to go public and take legal action to recover both past and future child support, which will have an impact on his career. This will be detailed in a letter from my attorney, along with copies of all relevant evidence. You've got the options: leave without the children, just pack your bags and leave, or sign these papers and stay with the children. You do know we won't be a couple. You have until Tuesday to consult with an attorney if you want. But let's be clear, if you refuse to sign and attempt to take the children, I will find you and take legal action. I won't lose my children. They do not deserve that, neither do I, period. One final condition: you should never see or communicate with Daniel again. If you do, you'll both suffer severe consequences. You've lost me and you'll lose him too. Do not lose your children as well. So will you sign these documents now? Alternatively, consult an attorney first. I'll sign them now, she said quietly. She signed both the divorce and custody documents. I put them in my briefcase. I'm going to the bank to secure these in my safe deposit box, as previously discussed. Move into the spare bedroom. Goodbye, Emily. I will see you tomorrow. I said something and then left. The next day I moved back in and settled. Emily had relocated her belongings to the spare room as instructed to outsiders. Our household appeared normal. We maintained a polite demeanor, conversed, shared meals, played with the kids, and even laughed at their antics. But the intimate connection had vanished. There were no secret glances or warm touches. The intimacy we once shared had vanished. I avoided touching her and didn't allow her to touch me. Time moved relentlessly, often feeling like a weight crushing us many nights. I remained awake, haunted by what we had lost. I wish it could all just disappear. I wanted it to be a nightmare that would end when I woke up, but it lingered each day. I knew Emily had her own difficult nights. Occasionally her sobs reached my ears. I used to be moved to comfort her when she cried, do anything to make her happy. Now I lay in bed feeling nothing but cold detachment and wondering how to this point. I knew I'd become someone I couldn't rise, though I didn't care. I had become numb to Emily's pain and could barely feel mine. Over the next few months, Emily continued to try to talk about her actions, hoping that we could reconcile and find happiness again. Each time I bluntly shut her down, emphasizing that no words could undo betrayal. Every rejection seemed to crush her a little harder, and her sobs filled the house. As the pregnancy progressed, her body changed noticeably. One Friday morning she called to say she was in labor. I rushed home to get her to the hospital. 3 hours later she delivered a healthy baby girl. I stayed with her throughout the process, holding her hand and supporting her through the labor and delivery. When she asked what name I wanted for the baby, I suggested Evelyn, which we could call Grace. This surprised her, because Evelyn was her mother's name and she knew I had problems with her mother. I told her she could choose any name she wanted, as long as it was unrelated to me or my family. She appeared hurt and shocked, but I didn't care anymore. I just walked away. On Saturday I paid Grace a visit. She was absolutely precious and she quickly won my heart. I fell in love with her right away and couldn't understand how could I fall in love with another man's child again. It had happened before with Daniel and Olivia, and I had no idea they were not mine. Despite being fully aware, I couldn't stop loving her. I could not explain it, but it happened. On Sunday, I visited the hospital to bring Emily and Grace home. Her parents were present. When I arrived, Evelyn, her mother, confronted me demanding to know why I hadn't visited Emily. On Saturday, when I went to see Grace, I expected Emily to defend me, but she remained silent with tears in her eyes. I looked at her and she turned away. I felt disgusted and furious. I told Evelyn that my actions were none of her concern and that she should speak with her daughter for answers. Evelyn responded saying she had every right to be concerned. As Emily's mother, I turned to face her again and she finally spoke. "Mom and Dad, please leave it alone. Jack is here to take Grace and me home." Her father couldn't resist adding his piece. "Son, that's not the way to treat your wife's parents. But I should have expected this from someone like you." I snapped back. "Never call me son. I've never been your son and never will be now. Please leave." Emily apologized as she drove home. "Jack, I apologize for that. Why, Maya, they have never respected or accepted me as a member of the family. You've always made them believe I wasn't good enough for you. Why should I apologize? You never defended me. You've never respected me. Now I understand why you've never respected me, because you never really loved me. You have been disrespecting me since before we were married. No wonder they don't respect me." In the months that followed, I remained busy. I had a DNA test done on Grace to confirm she was Daniel's child. I didn't care about the outcome. I knew she would be. I only needed the documentation. I loved her as if she were my own. When she looked at me and smiled, it never failed to melt my heart. That bond was instantaneous and unbreakable. I also spent more time with Daniel and Olivia, striving to be the best father possible. With each passing day, I grew to love them even more. Daniel Michael may have provided the DNA, but I was their biological father. In all other ways, Life with my children was fantastic. I cherished them and they cherished me. The only thing missing was the love I once felt for Emily. I often reflected on how much she had meant to me and how much I missed her. I cried frequently. I took another drastic step by tapping Daniel Michael's office and home phones. I was aware it was illegal, but I didn't care. As expected, I found exactly what I was looking for. Emily couldn't resist calling Daniel and telling him he was a father again. "Hello, Daniel. It's Emily. What are you doing now, Emily? You know you are not supposed to contact me. What happens if Jack finds out?" "Oh, he will not find out. Daniel, I'm using a payphone in the mall. There's no way he'll find out. I called you, sweetheart. I just wanted to say that you're a father again, and she's adorable. Her name is Grace. You create the most precious babies. I'm glad she's adorable. Emily, when do you want to start the next one?" He chuckled. "You know I can't do it right now. Daniel, Jack and I haven't been intimate since he found out, so I can't get pregnant now." "Wow, you must be in desperate need of it. When would you like to get together?" "I really need it, Daniel. And while I would love to meet with you, I'm unable to do so at this time. I'm still hoping that one day Jack will forgive me and we can resume our marriage. Following that, we'll see if we can arrange to meet on occasion. It will not be like before. Jack is much more suspicious now." "Okay, Emily, just know that I'll see you whenever and wherever you can make it. Please stay in touch." "I will. Daniel, goodbye, sweetie. I love you." If you think that conversation hurt me or made me angry, you're mistaken. After everything she'd done, my heart was already shattered. There was nothing more for her to destroy. I couldn't care less about Emily. In my opinion, she was no longer important. All of my affection was now directed toward W.S., Daniel, Olivia, and Grace. They accepted every bit of affection I had left. Nothing Emily did could ever change this. Without my children, I might have wasted away or resorted to destructive behavior, but they were my anchor, keeping me steady in the midst of the storm Emily had created. I might have found the strength to forgive myself and try to rebuild our marriage. However, my children became my sole focus. Their love was all I needed to continue forward. They gave me purpose and the strength to keep going. A few months later, a tragedy occurred. Daniel Michael died in an automobile accident. His car veered off the road and collided with a tree. Emily learned of his death when she called his office and a stranger answered. I had kept the phone tap on expecting something like this. "Hello, this is Brian Collins." "Oh, I was trying to contact Daniel Michael. I apologize. Daniel Michael no longer works here. Can I ask who is calling? I'm just an old friend. I'll try calling him at home. Miss, I know this may come as a shock, but Daniel was involved in a car accident about 3 weeks ago. You should probably contact his family for more information. I'm very sorry to have to tell you this." I heard her gasp as the realization hit her and the line went dead. When I got home from work that night, Emily gave me a strange look. I acted normally and she said nothing. But that night and many nights after I heard crying in her room, she received a letter from the insurance company along with a claim from for Daniel Life Insurance naming the children as beneficiaries. She showed it to me and asked how I could fill it out. When it was mailed, she gave me another odd look. "You didn't appear surprised when you learned Daniel had died." She told Emily, "I have no feelings about Daniel's death. I'm not surprised and don't care. My only concern is that his children have enough money for their future." My reaction clearly upset her and she kept looking at me with that strange expression. A week later, I received a check for 11.0, the proceeds from Daniel's insurance policy. We deposited the funds in each of the children's college accounts. Each account now had 4.0 plus some interest from Daniel's initial deposits. When Daniel was ready for college, he would have approximately 8.0 available. Olivia would have around 10.0 and Grace about 13.0. This would significantly help cover their educational expenses. On the way back home, I mentioned that at least the kids' college expenses were covered and we wouldn't have to worry about funding every year. When Emily arrived home, she asked if we could talk. I agreed and she inquired whether to forgive and love her. Again, I shook my head indicating no. She called me cold-hearted and I admitted she was correct. She questioned how I had become so distant. I explained that I had never felt this way before and that her actions had changed me. I assured her that I did not experience the same emotional distance with my children, and she admitted that she saw a different side of me when I was with them. I informed her that genuine love and respect had never existed in our marriage and that she had only been using me all these years. Then she surprised me by asking if I had anything to do with Daniel's death. I nodded. She asked why and I explained that I had tapped into his work and home phones and listened to their conversations. I heard everything, including her telling him about becoming a father again and her hopes for a future together, even if it would be later. She inquired whether her end was near. I nodded again, confirming that it was only a matter of time. She committed suicide. 2 months later, having grown tired of waiting, tears welled up in my eyes, but not for Emily. She'd become a stranger to me long ago. My tears were for my children, whose innocent hearts had been shattered by this tragedy, which also broke my own heart. Emily left me a letter to find. It was hidden away so that only I could find it began. Dear Jack, I sincerely apologize. I cared for Daniel, but my feelings for you were far stronger. I know my actions shattered your feelings for me and I can't live without it. I understand how much pain I caused you and I hope that with time, you would find it within yourself to forgive and love me again. I realized that my decisions had changed you into someone you never were. When I saw you confront Daniel, I knew your love for me was over and I could not bear the truth. I'll take the knowledge of having ruined a good man to my grave. I wanted a man who would accept my selfishness and desire to be loved by two men. I don't blame you. It's an unreasonable expectation of anyone, but that is what I wish for. I lacked the strength to break away from Daniel's love. I should have but couldn't. I hope that my passing will relieve you of your inner turmoil. I hope that someday you will let go of your resentment toward me and Daniel. I hope you will eventually forgive yourself for who you became and your actions toward Daniel. I know the bad feelings go away when you're with the kids. I see love and admiration in your eyes and it makes me happy that they love you back. When you look at the children, I hope you see a piece of me in them and love them even more for it. I'm hoping that one day you'll love me again through your love for them. I'm truly sorry, Jack. Please forgive me for this final act. I just can't take it anymore. I love you all. Emily. This time the tears were genuine. My anger subsided, albeit slightly. I cried for the friend I'd lost, who would never laugh or cry with me. Again, I cried for my lover, who would never embrace or love me. Again, I cried for my children's mother, who would never again be able to share their joys, weddings, grandchildren, accomplishments or setbacks. I mourned the void left in my heart when the hatred faded. Hatred had been my shield, numbing the love I once had for her. And now that it was gone, I was left with nothing. I cried for the life I had imagined, knowing Emily could never be replaced. I wept for my soul, realizing that my hatred had caused me to devolve into something less human. I disposed of the letter and went to the bank to destroy all evidence of her infidelity, with the exception of the DNA results, which I kept in a safe deposit box. No one would ever find out the truth unless I will specify a future health reason that required my children to know I was not their biological father. I set up a medical trust fund and appointed a trustee to manage it. The trustee would receive the DNA results in a sealed envelope, which would only be opened if there were any hereditary health issues. I promised to preserve my memory for our children and the family. Nobody else needed to know what she had done. I never stopped my parents from seeing their grandchildren. They adored them and provided them with excellent care. They blamed me for their daughter's death, and I could see it in their eyes. They were wise enough not to say anything, most likely fearing that I would keep the children away. I would not have done that, but I was relieved. They did not bother me. Over time, the emptiness in my heart filled with love for my children and fond memories of Emily. Despite everything, she had made me happy for 8 years and didn't want to let that go eventually. I forgave myself. It took a while, but it finally happened. I had 3 wonderful children who needed their father. I sat in the front row of Daniel High School graduation beaming with pride as he accepted his diploma. The school board president, who also happened to be Hannah's mother, hugged him warmly. Hannah, Daniel's girlfriend since freshman year, came next. I could not have been more proud of him, and I knew Emily would have been too. Tears welled up in my eyes as they walked off stage together. You look so grown up. Daniel and Hannah were both planning to attend the University of Illinois in the fall, and everyone knew they would marry eventually. I was sure Emily would have liked Hannah. Following the ceremony, they approached the audience and hugged me tightly. I could not have been more proud of them. They both excelled academically and athletically, and their futures seemed promising. Daniel asked if it was okay for him and Hannah to attend a few graded UADM parties before returning home, so I said yes. Hannah gave me another hug and said, "Thank you. Dad says see you and Mom." Later, was in the third. As they walked away, I was struck by her calling me Dad. I had become her father as well. I met Hannah's mother, Angela, shortly after Daniel began high school. She was very involved in school activities, and Daniel kept saying how wonderful Hannah and Heather were. We finally met at a football game, and I felt like a teen again. I was instantly smitten with Angela when I discovered she was a single mother who had been divorced since Hannah was 9 years old, and her ex-husband had no interest in their family. After chatting for a while, I asked if she wanted to go get coffee after the game, and she agreed. We spent a lot of time together, and a year later we were married. I love her deeply and she loves me back. For a long time I didn't believe I'd ever be happily married again. But I am. For the past 3 years we had been a complete family. She adores Daniel, Olivia and Grace as if they were her own, and I love Hannah as if she were my own daughter. I've realized that you don't have to be a biological parent to love a child. Angela is aware of everything that happened between Daniel and Emily. I did not want to keep any secrets from her if we were to create a life together. When I told her everything, she was surprised but believed me. When I said the bad times were over, she was not concerned about our future. Our life together is incredible. I found a new friend, a new romantic partner, and a lifelong companion for all my dreams. My heart is full of love for my new wife and our children. Yes, there is a small space in there for the pleasant memories I had with Emily. Daniel has matured into a handsome young man. While he does resemble Emily as he ages, he begins to resemble his biological father. Olivia and Grace, on the other hand, look exactly like their mother. They are lovely and charming, and I see so much of Emily in them that I can't help but admire her for giving me such wonderful children as they got older. I told them as much as I could about their mother. I wanted them to know her as well as I did, to love her as much as I didn't, to understand how much she loved them. Just then Angela approached me, interrupting my thoughts about the past. She inquired where Daniel and Hannah were going. I informed her that they wanted to attend a few graduation parties before returning home. She smiled at me and said that if we hurried, we could go home and start working on the baby we had discussed. We quickly got into the car and drove home. Life is good and improving all the time. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.